Shall we start then with our discussion about Hollywood talent in games? Where would you like to begin?
Uh, yeah, I want to begin in that it feels like it's becoming a lot more prevalent in the last few years. But we shouldn't neglect the fact that this isn't anything new. Like this has been happening for a long time. From like the examples, like Mark Hamill was in Wing Commander 3, which was like 92 or 94, I want to say. So it's not a new phenomenon. You had like Christopher Lloyd as himself, like in person in a video game and like cutscenes in the early 90s. So it isn't a new phenomenon, but I feel like it's getting more sophisticated, and we're seeing it a lot more. And I kind of just wanted to kind of explore why that might be. So I think part of the reason, and others have weighed in on this as well, is that video games is really, it feels like it gets stronger and stronger every single year, and they're becoming really strong narrative driven affairs. So it can be quite enticing for an actor to kind of get into a video game. If they're not maybe going in for a movie role, they might go in for a video game role, because there's, video games are becoming very cinematic, and you get a lot of cinematic style games. Supermassive Games, for example, kind of they pride themselves on creating cinematic style decision based games, and we've seen throughout their catalog that they get a lot of big names from like Rami Malek and Hayden Panettiere in Until Dawn, and I know there's a load of other stars in there. They had Will Poulter in Little Hope, which was the last game in the Dark Pictures anthology. So that's kind of a running theme that they have. So Cyberpunk obviously had Keanu Reeves as a very frontal character, and was used in kind of the launch material. So we're seeing it a lot more, and it's kind of, I guess there's kind of two ways that actors can look at it. You could maybe take the Rami Malek approach, that was kind of his springboard. Like, he'd been in a few things, but maybe wasn't a major player in the industry. But off the back of that, he then was very quickly in Mr. Robot, and then he's gone on to win basically every award under the sun for Bohemian Rhapsody. He's now going to be in the new Bond coming up. Now, I'm not saying that's all because of the back of being in Until Dawn, but it definitely helped him on his springboard to kind of propel him forward and get him out there and kind of show what he can do as an actor, even though it's in a video game rather than necessarily in a TV show or films. And then you've got kind of the other end of the spectrum, where it's Keanu Reeves, who everyone knows. Keanu Reeves been in the industry for years and years and years, and it's kind of a way for him to, he's a big name to get involved, and he doesn't need the push that Cyberpunk gives him, but he then brings an audience to Cyberpunk because it's Keanu Reeves, and people want to see Keanu Reeves. People love Keanu Reeves, and he has that big name factor that will drag people kind of wherever he goes. And I don't think it's any coincidence that in 2019 at E3, when it was announced that Keanu Reeves was going to be in it, it was the most watched trailer of the event. So there's kind of the two ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah, I mean, that Keanu Reeves moment at E3, we talk about E3 a lot on the show. It's the big expo where all games, or the biggest games in the world, are traditionally announced, and when Keanu came out on stage, just felt like a classic E3 moment of people just going absolutely wild. Someone in the crowd was yelling that he was breathtaking, and he obviously was. I think Keanu, there's a few actors out there who are obviously fans of games. Like, you think about how big gaming is, like, just statistically, a lot of celebrities must be gamers. So we know that a lot of actors are. People like Brie Larson has streamed on Twitch and those sorts of things. And Henry Cavill, who stars in The Witcher, which is obviously based on a series which has a game in the franchise, he's also a massive gamer. So I think there's that kind of appeal as well, I guess. Like, I guess actors, a lot of them have passion projects, and sometimes a game could be a passion project just as much as being in a, I guess in terms of the effort involved, sometimes you've got a lot of mocap, but sometimes it's a matter of voice recording. It's like doing an animated film, like doing a Pixar film potentially. You do a lot of takes, you sync up to an animation rather than having your face recorded. So there's lots of ways that you can do it. I guess one of the interesting things, and we've talked a little bit about, well, we're going to talk more about 12 minutes because we're going to play it later in the show. 12 minutes is quite a small scale game. It's a game that takes place in basically one apartment, but it has these three big name actors in it. Willem Dafoe, Daisy Ridley, James McAvoy, and it seems a little bit strange for a game of that scale to attract 3 large name actors. And obviously we don't know how much money changed hands. We know it's on Game Pass. Obviously there's some sort of Microsoft money bag somewhere along the line. They could have been very well paid. But it's interesting to see that that's maybe starting to, not just be something reserved for AAA high-profile games, but also something that smaller games could potentially engage with if they are aiming for that more of a narrative feel. Do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's worked out for 12 minutes, for example? Has that propelled them to higher heights in terms of awareness?
I think it definitely will have helped. As you said, the Game Pass factor has a point. But to be honest, I almost would have... It's very prominent in the credits and the beginning of the game that it stars these 3 high-profile people. But other than Willem Dafoe's very distinctive voice, if I didn't know, I don't think I would have been like, oh, that's James McAvoy. I think it would have washed over me, and I just wouldn't have noticed. I would have been playing and be like, that sounds a lot like Willem Dafoe.
The Willem Dafoe impersonator they got for this is fantastic.
Yeah. But I think being able to say, hey, these people are in this game, even if you might have missed it otherwise, is definitely a factor, because you go, oh, that's a big name, and that's maybe not a game I necessarily would have heard of. I'm going to check it out. So yes, I do think it does help. And I think it's an interesting distinction that you made there as well, to kind of the difference between, okay, I'm the star of this game and you can see that it's me, or I'm voice acting in this game, either as my own voice or I'm doing like an animated film and I'm voice acting and kind of have a role in that, because it's kind of like from starring in the game to appearing in the game, even if you're a main character. So like, some examples, like you have Elijah Wood was Spyro, and you have Gary Oldman, who was Reznov in Black Ops, and he actually jokingly has said in interviews that he's more well known for playing Reznov in Call of Duty than he is for his 30-year acting career, which has some stunning performances. He's one of the best actors in the business, as opposed to kind of the way Supermassive does it, and a lot of other companies do it, where the stars of the game look like they look in real life, just obviously digital. And I think that's maybe a reason why more actors are maybe being drawn to video games a little bit more than they used to, because the motion capture and the visuals now are so good that you are starring in it, and it's obvious that it's you, and you are really playing a role in it, as opposed to maybe just voicing it, which is like an animated film. So I guess there's not too much difference there from, okay, I'm going to be in The Croods, or I'm going to be, the voice in a video game. Yeah. So it is an interesting distinction to make, and it would be interesting to know, and it would require a little bit more research, and I wish I'd thought of this before I came on, because I can't do it now, is to kind of see whether that makes a difference to sales. Like, does having a big name do a voice have less of an impact as having a big name who is the face of the game, and you can see them and walk around as them in the game? It'd be interesting to see how much of a difference that makes, if it does or it doesn't. Yeah,
and I think when you think about Death Stranding and what they accomplished with Mads Mikkelsen and Norman Reedus, who are both fully mocapped, did full body capture, not just facial capture for the game, and it's very obviously them. They both have very distinctive faces. Norman Reedus was featured very prominently in the marketing. The character's face was on every poster, most posters, and all the kind of advertisements. And I guess it kind of parallels a little bit with advances in like the film industry, where a lot of actors are maybe starting to do that for films as well. You think about Mark Ruffalo performing as the Hulk in the Marvel films. He's mocapping. You think about anything Andy Serkis has ever done. Whether it's Gollum or an ape or anything that he's done, he's mocapping, and I know that he's always pushed for more recognition from the world of acting for what you might call virtual or digital performances, where you're kind of layering over somebody but they're still acting. So yeah, it's definitely fascinating. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, just following on from what you said, I think it gives, and what is compelling for actors, it gives them an opportunity to maybe do something a little bit different that they wouldn't necessarily maybe do in a film. It feels like you can maybe push the boundaries a little bit more in a game, maybe go some areas that you might not be known for in Hollywood to not get those kind of roles, but the opportunity is there in gaming to do it. So I think that would be alluring. And I just want to finish with a quote from Anna Rust, who did an interview not that long ago, and she's been in TV and films. She's been in a bunch of games, and a quote from her that I thought was really poignant for kind of this discussion. She said, "People are finally waking up to how great games can be, and actors can finally get fully fleshed out characters in games now. And just because you're not physically on screen doesn't mean you can't get some of the most compelling performances out there," which I think is true. And a really good point, well made. And yeah, I think we will see more and more actors getting into games, and maybe some of the more well-known actors, as newer movie stars break through onto the scene, maybe getting some of the younger roles, that some of the older veteran actors who maybe aren't getting the roles they used to be getting can get themselves into video games where it doesn't maybe matter that they're that bit older, because they don't have to be doing as much. They can be brought down in age. So yeah, I'm pretty sure
you can use the character creator. You can just turn the age right down.
Exactly. So I think
that's how simple mocap is.
I think it's a very interesting development that's happening in the industry. It's nothing new. It's been happening for a long time, but I think it's going to get more and more prevalent. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens and see what movie stars come into games. Are there any stars you want to see in games going forward? Do you think he'd be great in a game, or she would be great in a game?
A lot of great actors have done games. Like, I'm a big Keith David fan, and we talked before we went live about his role in several games, including Call of Duty, Halo, and yeah, I always loved his performances. You mentioned Gary Oldman, who's another one that I think we both have a lot of respect for. But yeah, I mean, it would be great to see, I guess, some of those really big names that haven't maybe done it yet, like Brad Pitt. Where's the Brad Pitt game? That would be great, wouldn't it? So we'll all stay tuned for that. Hopefully there'll be more to talk about in the future. And thanks for your time, Ben. I appreciate that little insight into your head and the world of Hollywood in games.
No worries. Films and games, two of my most favourite things. So very happy to talk about it.